Can lightning strike twice? Back in 2017, Honda released the FK8 generation Civic Type R in Australia. It was our first Type R in 6 years and the first factory turbocharged Civic Type R to land on our soil as well. And both the motoring media and the general public absolutely frothed on it. Now there's a new one, and boy is it hyped. However, is it a great leap forward over the previous generation? After all, it uses the same platform, the same engine, and a very similar suspension, with only minor changes to things like power, torque, and suspension geometry. Though it's now built in Japan rather than the UK, the fundamental recipe is pretty similar, so is the driving experience all that different? There's only one way to find that out.
What an addictive engine. This is definitely one of Honda's most enjoyable and most powerful engines, but we'll get to that in a second. But first we need to, I think, maybe recap on the previous episode in the Civic Type R saga. So the last Civic Type R we had was the FK8 series, previous generation Civic, and that was kind of a bit of a high watermark. Magazines, TV shows, websites all around the world almost universally rated that as their favorite, their top hot hatch of the time. And now there's a follow-up, so obviously the expectations are pretty high. But when you look at the sort of top level information, you kind of wonder, like, how different is this thing versus the car that came before, the FK8? I mean, after all, it uses the same engine. It's still front-wheel drive. There seems to be a lot of mechanical commonality, and it seems, when you look at the thing, that the most effort has been put into the cosmetics to make it look a little bit more soft-edged, less like a Gundam robot, something that might be a little bit more universally appealing. And on the inside, obviously, there's a lot of regular Civic hardware, but there's still some Type R specific features, like obviously these seats, a screen that now tells you some data about what the car's doing, electronic instrument panel, and all that sort of good electronic stuff, but it's just like electronic glitter. Does it actually move the car forward? Well, let's talk about the things that make this car different to the FK8 and why those things matter. Chief among these is the wheel and tyre package. Wheel size has actually gone backwards. The wheels are an inch smaller now, which is actually a good thing because the ride of the previous Civic Type R was really quite brittle. Wasn't something that you could live with day to day. I mean, you could, but it would be a struggle. This car, though, when just in normal drive modes, it rides great. Even on this road, and there's, just went over a few ripples back there that in the FK8 series would have definitely been noticeable through the camera, although I doubt it barely wobbled the picture one bit. It really does have this suppleness to its ride that is kind of uncommon in modern hot hatches. Modern hot hatches tend to really sort of skew towards the very stiff side of the ride spectrum. Obviously, people associate a stiff ride with being sporty, but besides feeling comfortable, this feels incredibly pointy. Like, oh, sorry, the road's twisty, so I'm just gonna enjoy myself for a little bit. Maybe demonstrate the cornering, because, oh yeah, it just grips. Just keep turning the wheel. It's not gonna run out of grip, unless you do something foolish with the throttle at the same time. It will power understeer. It's still front-wheel drive. You can't cheat physics in any great way. But gee, there's so much grip in this thing. And a big part of the reason why is because the tyres are now wider. Though the wheel size has gone down an inch, the tyre width, the width of the contact patch, the tread face, is now 265 mils. That is a lot. That is a big increase over the previous generation because that was a 245 section tyre on 20-inch wheels. Now we've got 265s on 19s, and it's just a win-win. The comfort is improved. Grip is stupendous. The suspension is also, it's a dual mode thing, so the dampers are adjustable. One thing that is new for the FL5 is the addition of an individual drive mode. Previously you just had normal mode, comfort mode, and R Plus or Sport. You couldn't really tailor the various characteristics of the car to your liking. Now you can, so you can kind of pick from the menu and figure out what kind of configuration suits you best. For me, that is the comfort steering mode, so it's a little bit lighter. It's still got a fair bit of weight to it, even in the comfort mode, but it just doesn't tire your arms out, because Sport is really quite stiff. There's a lot of turning force required. Suspension, I put that in the softest mode possible, because when it's in its firmest mode, it does kind of maybe a little bit too firm for repeated corrugations and big bumps, and it kind of just leaps over it and skips over it rather than keeping traction. But all of the other attributes I just put right at the top, because that's the most fun. That for me, that is the perfect configuration for roads like this. You get a compliant suspension, you get steering that doesn't fight against you, and you get razor sharp engine response. The exhaust is meant to be a little bit louder in sport modes, but I don't know. I can't really tell. It's kind of a little bit of a quiet exhaust to begin with. But now, the really great thing about the Civic Type R, this one, the new one, is just how everything meshes together. Everything feels like it's in perfect harmony with everything else. What I mean is, the steering works so well with the grip that's available from the wheel and tire package, and of course the suspension. There are some suspension geometry tweaks as well, so it's not exactly the same suspension as the previous car, so it does have some grip advantages there, besides the fat tires. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by this road. It's so much fun. Rev matching as well. Previous car did have rev matching, except for the second to first down change. Now it does it in every gear. So driving around town, that does make a difference. It makes it easier to drive a little bit smoother. Out here, though, you're not really shifting second to first, unless you're driving very slowly or there's the world's sharpest hairpin in front of you. But yeah, going back to the control harmony, everything just feels so cohesive. Like the way this car has been engineered, it's obvious that every department, the steering department, the engine department, the gear shift department, they all talk to each other, and they're all on the same page about what the car needs to feel like from the driver's point of view. And boy, it feels magic. If you ever drove the FK8, have a drive of this, and I think you'll agree, it really does feel like a significant step above. This is not just a reskin of the old car, not by any means at all. There is some genuine engineering effort that's gone into this. Oh, it's so good. And roads like this, it just eats them up. Oh, I love this. Now, in terms of the numbers, 235 kilowatts, 420 newton meters of torque, those are pretty healthy numbers. There are small increases over the previous car, also a fatter torque curve through various refinements to the engine intake, turbocharger trim, things like that, the small nerdy details. And it does feel like a very drivable engine, although there is, I would say, noticeable turbo lag versus a lot of European turbo engines. But to be honest, I kind of like that, because it gives you that rush, that build, that like a big elastic band is being pulled back and it's just slingshotting the car forward. Was really bumpy, but it's just got enough chewiness in the suspension that it loves it. I love it. Oh, okay, we're above the clouds now. Very good. Now, don't believe people who tell you that this thing doesn't torque steer. It does torque steer. Of course it does. 420 Newton meters is a lot of torque for just the front wheels to manage, while also doing the task of steering. So naturally there is going to be some torque steer, but considering the numbers that we have, it's really not that much. It doesn't fight you. The steering does wiggle around, especially in a road like this when the road camber is changing and there's bumps and stuff to sort of work the front suspension up and down. That does, combined with, being on the power, generate a little bit of steering wiggle, but it's very easy to manage, especially if you have the steering in the low weight setting. You don't have to fight the electronic steering weight, which, I don't think really adds much to the feel or feedback of the car. It's just kind of, it feels sporty. Is it really? Not really. Yeah, it's just more enjoyable with the lighter steering mode. But to summarize this car, I don't think there's many other cars that are as effective at just gobbling up a twisty mountain road like this, while also giving the driver a lot of information about what's actually happening in front of them and underneath them, and just involving the driver in the whole process. Yeah, there are quicker point-to-point cars. You're talking about, the all-wheel drive stuff, Golf R, certainly Audi RS3, and definitely Mercedes A45S. But look, those are cars that are all more expensive, and yeah, the Golf R is more expensive when you consider on the road. It's pricier than this thing, and in the context of what it gives you, I think it's actually a really good deal. I do find this thing to have quite a lot of appeal versus those all-wheel drive products, because it is more involving, and yeah, maybe not quite as quick because you've only got 2 driven wheels, but man, I don't care. It is such a great instrument. It's maybe got a slightly duller edge versus the absolute scalpel that was the FK8, but I think that actually makes it a better car, because this is 100% one of the most usable and one of the most rapid hot hatches that you can buy today. Oh boy, I've reached the top of the mountain. There's no more road for me to enjoy. So I guess that is a good place to stop this video. To wrap it up, I love the Civic Type R. It's way better than I thought it would be. I did genuinely think it would just be more of the same with more modern trimmings, but it really isn't that. It's so much more. It's going to be difficult to hand this one back. Anyway, thank you so much for making it this far. Thanks for watching my stuff, and I do hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.